Welcome to the Law School Insider, where we have conversations with students, lawyers, and employers.
Succeeding in law school is something that you must prepare for, not only before you begin, but throughout your law school journey, and that's what this podcast is all about. I am your host, Dr. Christopher Lewis, and I will draw from my over 20 years of experience in the college admission field, as well as bring forth the experiences of others as we delve deeper into the issues. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Law School Insider. I'm your host, Dr. Christopher Lewis, and I'm so excited to have you back again this week. Now this week, we are going to go behind the scenes with Kaplan. And as you probably know, Kaplan is a learning-based entity. It is there to help you to be able to get prepared for the LSAT, your bar, or other types of tests. But it is only one of many different types of entities that are out there. But today, we have the pleasure of having Jeff Thomas, who is the Director of Pre-Law Programs from Kaplan, joining us. And we're going to talk about the LSAT, we'll talk about bar prep, we're going to talk about a lot of different things that will help you to get a better feel for not only preparing for the LSAT, but also preparing for the bar and beyond. So Jeff, thanks so much for being on the show with us this week.
I appreciate the opportunity. Thanks for having me.
You know, Jeff, the LSAT can be a daunting task for many people. Some people are very scared of it, and they look ahead of time and they see it out there, but they don't know how to prepare for it or how to kind of frame it for themselves. And I know we talked a little bit about this before we got online today, but you have a kind of an interesting perspective on how someone should frame the LSAT.
I do. You know, it's very often the case that students find the LSAT to be this major hurdle standing between them and what is often a lifelong ambition, a burning ambition to their dream law school. And they was like, if I just get over this last hurdle and post a great score, I never have to worry about standardized tests again. Of course, not true. You have to take the bar exam. But then I can go off to law school and not have to think about it any longer. And we really encourage our students to really reframe the LSAT in a very different light. The LSAT is really an opportunity for pre-law students to show law schools the skills that they have walking into the door to their program. Said differently, the LSAT's a very strong test. It has not been changed substantially since 1991, and there are lots of reasons for that. Law schools have really come to rely upon the LSAT as the measure in any candidate's profile as to their readiness for law school. Reason being, the backgrounds that students come from is tremendously varied. We can have everything from poli-sci majors and history majors and philosophy majors to science majors, business majors. Students might have foreign language or music or the humanities in their background. And it's really difficult for law schools to be able to judge the academic profile of students of such a varied background. But the LSAT was a test that has been designed to test a student's ability to do the skills that lawyers do, to evaluate the strength of arguments, to evaluate the structure of arguments, to differentiate between dense text chock full of deep and rich opinions, to deduce seemingly conflicting rules of information and assemble them together into orders that make sense. And so we tell students, when you're approaching LSAT preparation, don't think of it as an obstacle. Every extra point that a student can squeeze out of their LSAT score doesn't only make them better likely to get into their program of choice, but truly makes them better prepared for the law school experience. They are that much more equipped to do the skills that lawyers do. And rest assured, if a student walks into a law school with, say, a median LSAT score of a 165 for something in class, a student who's able to walk into that law school with a 168 or 169, all else being equal, is going to have a much better opportunity to be at the top of the class come the end of first year than the student who might earn admission but only with an LSAT score of a 161 or 162. So that student, when you think about LSAT preparation and think of it as commencing my legal education, that different framing might allow that student to feel a little bit more, I guess, excited, if that's a word, about approaching the LSAT prep, and therefore more likely to give it the onus it deserves and hopefully get a great score in the back end. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, and I really appreciate you sharing that. Now, when someone is looking at preparing for the LSAT, and I know you've worked with a lot of different students at a lot of different levels, and they're looking at the different ways that they can do that. Are there certain tips or hints or things that you would specifically say to them in trying to prepare the best that they can. And also, especially when we're talking about preparation programs, because Kaplan is one of those.
Sure.
If they're trying to evaluate those and try to figure out which program is right for them, are there certain questions that they should be asking as well?
Sure. I'll answer your question by sort of telling you what I find is the biggest mistake that students make when approaching the LSAT. So it's very common for students to approach the LSAT, which is entirely a skills-based test, by doing a lot of practice, and that instinct is correct. But the way students will practice, they'll get a book from the LSAC of past administered exams, which you can easily get off of Amazon, and just take test after test after test after test and hope that the score improves. And in fact, at first it will, because students will become more familiar with the question types, they'll get more accustomed to the strict timing demands and the sections of the exam, and they'll see their scores start to rise. But then they'll quickly see it plateau, and they'll say to themselves, how come I've taken 5 consecutive tests and gotten a score within 1 or 2 points of each other in all 5 exams? And the reason is because they've taken 5 consecutive tests. The test is a skills assessment. If I take an assessment on day 1 and then another assessment on day 2, but do nothing in between day 1 and day 2 to change my approach to the questions on the test, it's no surprise I'm going to earn the same score. In fact, Einstein is famously quoted as saying, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing repeatedly and expecting a different result. And so what a student really needs to do to make the most of their LSAT preparation is to certainly take a full-length assessment, take a full-length practice test, but then analyze their performance. Don't just take another test. Figure out where my strengths and weaknesses lie on that assessment. And not just in logic games versus logical reasoning or reading comprehension, but within logical reasoning. Am I struggling in assumption questions, or is it inference questions? Is it parallel reasoning questions, method of argument questions, strength and weakening questions? Where is it that I'm really, what skill am I really struggling in the most vis-a-vis how frequently it's tested? And then focus on individual skill building. And by earning 1 or 2 more points right in question type X, and 1 or 2 more points right in question type Y, and 1 or 2 more points right in question type Z, those individual incremental improvements is what ends up raising a student's score overall. And so really the biggest mistake students make is by sort of looking at the test globally, where in fact, from a micro level, building up one's skills is how one is most successful. And so when evaluating prep options for a student, if they're going to do self-preparation or what we call maker prep and do a lot of work on their own, students should be really encouraged to not just take full-length tests, but look at skills individually and learn how to tackle each of those efficiently or effectively. But if they're looking at something more comprehensive, students should be seeing what's the approach that this prep company takes to the preparation process. Is it more one-size-fits-all, where every student's doing the same thing, coming to the same classes, taking the same practice questions, doing the same homework? Or is that preparation plan really personalized, where you'll be able to evaluate your individual strengths and weaknesses as the course progresses and do different assignments, different learning objectives, et cetera, as they progress throughout the course? I think that's one of the key differences students should be asking themselves.
Those are wonderful questions to ask, and I hope people are taking notes because, and you can, that's the nice thing about a podcast is that you can always go back in time and you can listen again, because everything that was just shared with you from Jeff is gold. And you want to make sure that you are doing these things because you want to make sure that you are preparing yourself well and you are getting the score that you want to be getting. And now, Jeff, what happens for a student, let's say that they take a Kaplan course, or if a student came to you and said, you know what, I studied my rump off and I found that I just did not get the score and I don't know what to do next. What would you say to that student?
Well, first of all, we'd talk to them about how they actually approach the preparation the first time and see how we might approach it differently the second time. Secondly, the students need to understand at the outset, since the LSAT is entirely a skills-based test, it is like learning how to play a new sport, a new musical instrument. It's impossible for us to predict how long it's going to take any one student to be able to develop those skills. Like, I can't tell folks how long it's going to take to learn how to swing a golf club. It just takes practice, and at some point you're going to get it. And so it's often the case that students just simply underestimate the time it takes to develop those skills. And just because a student hasn't done it yet doesn't mean they can't. We just need to adjust the approach. Then from a more practical perspective, students need to understand that they can take the LSAT up to 3 times in a 2-year period. Schools, frankly, these days, since 2007 really it was the big change, they are very used to seeing multiple LSAT scores in student applications. If a student has one score and a second score that is substantially higher, law schools would expect to see an addendum in an application that says, here's what I did differently to earn that higher score the second time. But students shouldn't fret that it will necessarily look bad on a law school application to have 2 scores. Certainly, we encourage all students to prep thoroughly once, get a great score the first time, not have to worry about it, and put their best foot forward right away. But should they need to retest and take the exam a second time, let's switch out your approach to preparation, get you ready for that next test date. But the same token, don't worry too much about how law schools evaluate that, because it's quite common.
Now, I want to transition to being in law school, because there are, as you said, there is another test that you have to prepare for, and that is at the end of your legal education, the bar exam. And many students also fear that as well, because it is the culmination of their legal studies. It is so important to be able to have that outside bar preparation, no matter what your law school provides. Yeah. It's so important to have that outside perspective as well. But there's a number of different companies that are out there. Sure. And when you are talking to students about what they should be looking for on that end, are there certain things that they should be considering, or are there certain questions that they should be asking when considering bar preparation programs?
It's very similar to the LSAT preparation side. The bar exam preparation really is, again, and it's more of an aggregation of content knowledge, more so than an aggregation of skills. The skills that one needs to perform well on is the same, irrespective of the area of law being tested on the exam. But by the same token, we would encourage students to work with a provider who really uses data as a key component of the course experience. Kaplan is a very data-driven organization, meaning we take a lot of student inputs as they go throughout our courses, and we provide customized study recommendations based upon those inputs we receive. And so that really allows us to drill down into individual students' strengths and weaknesses in either content or skills, or in either content or skills areas, and then prescribe appropriate remediation as necessary. Again, the one-size-fits-all modality for bar preparation, or preparation for anything that's skills-based by that nature, can be a little bit less efficient for the student. And so for that short period of time, that's going to be, I remember before I took the bar exam many years ago, I had a bar review advisor come to me and say, Jeff, I really hope this is the worst summer of your life. Because if it's the worst summer of your life, it means you've done it right. You've given it the appropriate due diligence and attention that the preparation process deserves. But still, to work with a bar review company that can give you that data analytics piece throughout your preparation to really make sure you're constantly focused on the right areas at the right times for you, I think that's a big component of the process.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Now, as I said at the beginning, this show is all about law school success. So I want to delve a little deeper into your own journey, because that's what this is all about.
Sure.
So let's talk a little bit about the journey that you went on. And I'm going to take you back in time, roll back the clock a little bit. And when you were first identifying that you wanted to go to law school, what was it about the law that drew you in, and what sustains you today?
Oh, you're going to hate the answer to this question, but I'll happily provide it to you. I was probably the classic example of a student who wasn't right to go to law school in the first place. Candidly, I hated to shop, if that makes any sense. When I was in high school, of all things, I was doing research for colleges I might want to attend, and there was a college, a Rensselaer-Pottendam student in upstate New York that was recruiting me because I'd done well in math and science in high school. And they'd offered me some scholarship money, and I'd come to their school to visit and see what it may be like to become a student there. And I was sitting with the admissions office of the school, and they were asking me very basic questions about my interests, et cetera. They gave me a form to fill out that said, what might you want to study when you came here? And there was a box that said management/law. And at the time, I knew I either wanted to go into business or wanted to go into law. And I think that's a very similar crossroads that many undergraduates make at some time in their career. And I checked that box. I felt to be very noncommittal. And instead, RPI told me about a 3-3 program they had where I would be an undergraduate in their management school for 3 years and then go to Albany Law School for 3 years and earn both degrees in 6. And I said, okay. And that's how I became an attorney. I frankly didn't do a lot of what I now counsel students, the appropriate introspection about why one wants to go to law school, what they're hoping to do with their JD, what's the career path they're going on, have you shadowed attorneys, et cetera. But at the same time, that was 12, 13 years ago, and actually longer than that. Oh my gosh, I'm getting old. But and the dynamic, I think, in the legal marketplace has significantly changed in the ensuing decades. And so I think it's much more important that students do a lot lot more and deeper introspection than I did when deciding if law school was right for them. I just lucked out. I went there. I loved law school. I had started teaching the LSATs for Kaplan while I was in law school. And when I graduated law school, Kaplan was looking for someone to really focus on the law school admission side of their business in the New York metropolitan market. And I jumped at the opportunity to sort of blend together my management background and my law degree. And I've never left. And it's been a wonderful, wonderful career for me. And I've truly been one of the lucky ones. But I would encourage your listeners to do more introspection than that. Sorry, Chris, if that was a disappointing answer or not as uplifting as you're hoping for, but it is what it is.
It is what it is, and that's perfectly fine, because every person has a journey, and every person goes into law school for a different reason, but they come out and they find success in different ways. Now, as you think back to your own law school experience, are there certain things that now that you look back, are there things that you wish that you would have done, that you wish that you would have worked on, that would help you to find the success that you have found today at a quicker rate?
Yeah, I think I tend to be a guy that doesn't have a lot of regrets in life. And I really enjoyed the law school experience and took it from an approach of trying to make the most of it at the time. And I think I've dictated the plan fairly well, as it turned out. What I would encourage students to do a couple things. One, law school is chock full of, practical, experiential learning opportunities, as call it now, even more so than it was when I went to school. And the most interesting and career-building opportunities I had in law school were doing moot court competitions and taking a trial advocacy class and a negotiation class and taking internships. I worked for the New York State Racing and Wagering Board as in law school, and just really doing as much real-world clinical type work as possible in the law school. So I graduated law school knowing what attorneys do on a daily basis and having worked to develop those skills once I was there. It wasn't just a lot of legal studies and rhetoric. It was actual practical application, and I cherished those experiences to build the skills that I had. That's one. And then two, in terms of the course load that students have to take, I'm going to generalize here. There's tend to be two schools of thought. There's one where you take a whole lot of bar readiness classes. At the time, the New York State bar exam had, I think, 26 individually tested subjects on it. I know now in the days of the universal bar exam, that's changed a little bit. But some students will sort of fill their dance card over 3 years, taking all the classes of things that are going to be tested on the bar review, and maybe putting in the back burner some of the classes that may be of more interest for eventual career pathing. I would encourage students to do the opposite. Law school is a wonderful, wonderful opportunity to get exposure to areas of law that you just don't know much about. And you may not have had that exposure to. It may somewhere in the back recesses of your mind be somewhat interesting or tick a synapse somewhere. Use law school as the opportunity to explore and find out where your passion really lies, because this is going to be the rest of your life. Your bar review class will teach you everything you need to know, even for those subjects that you didn't take classes in law school. So spend the time while you're there really trying to figure out where your passion lies and go after a career path that's going to be exciting and rewarding for you for the rest of your life. That's what I would advise.
Great advice, and I appreciate you sharing that today. Now, before we finish up today, I just always open it up and leave the opportunity for you to be able to leave any parting advice, any thoughts, resources, things that people should be thinking about as they're trying to find the success in their law school journey that you've been able to find in your own.
Law school is a means to an end. It is not an end in and of itself, right? And so a lot of students think about, I'm getting to law school, and then what's next? I'll eventually find a job. That JD is your gateway to that career path, as I said, where you were going to be spending the rest of your waking days, hopefully in a prosperous and rewarding career. And so if you're not sure what that career path is going to be, you don't have to have necessarily the exact firm you want to work for, the exact type of law picked out. But if you have not done some real serious introspection and research about what your career path might be, where you might want to work, shadow some folks, get an internship, etc., please, 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 there's no rush to complete your legal education. Take the time to do that. Law school admissions folks will tell you they don't care whether or not you take a gap year or 2 or 10. We are here for you. The law schools are there for you when you are best suited to apply. And if you're not sure if law school is the right place for you yet, that's okay. Take the time to find out, because once you're sure that your passion is there, not only will you you'll probably take the law school admissions process more seriously, but you'll be more motivated to give your 110% once you're there, not just hoping to sort of go through the motions until the day that you graduate. So I would encourage folks, there's no necessary rush. If your passion's been there since age 5 around the Thanksgiving dinner table, go for it right after college. If you need a little bit more time to, quote, find yourself, that's quite all right too.
Well, Jeff, I really appreciate you being here today. Now, where can people best find out more information about Kaplan and what it can provide?
Yeah, certainly. So our website is captest.com. If you go to captest.com/LSAT, you'll get all the information about our LSAT preparation courses, the unique plan that we take for our students' preparation, a resource called the LSAT channel, which our students have found particularly exciting about. So all the information there about sort of Kaplan's resources are right there on our site.
Well, Jeff, thank you so much. I truly appreciate learning about your journey, learning about the success metrics and success principles that you and Kaplan have, and to be able to share that with all of our listeners today. So thank you, and I look forward to talking with you again in the future.
I really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Well, that was another great guest this week on the Law School Insider. If you have an interest in being a guest on the show, drop me an email at lawschoolinsider@cooley.edu. And thank you all for listening today, and remember, you have the ability and right to take control of your law school's success. I hope you'll continue listening, creating a plan for success that will prepare you to achieve the dreams that you have set for yourself. Talk to you next time. Thanks for listening. You're on your way to being a law school insider. Please subscribe to stay connected and come back again next time as we speak to more students, lawyers, and employers.